So about a month ago, I did this shoot for a production company. I'm not too sure the end client was. It was a combination project between Nando's and an NGO called Malaria No More. So they take brand ambassadors from a lot of countries around the world and they use them as part of their campaign. So for South Africa, they used Siya Kolisi. And obviously for his shoot, they wanted him with a rugby ball. And there was an international artist who'd drawn up all of the artwork for the whole campaign, and he had to put the artwork onto a rugby ball. They gave him an existing rugby ball, and he had to draw some of the artwork that he'd previously designed onto the ball. The problem was that during the day, from throwing the ball around, his artwork started to chip and peel off. And the client asked me if I wouldn't mind photoshopping about 12 of the images just to put his original artwork back onto the ball and to get rid of the colors that were on the ball because they couldn't find a white one. So I just want to talk you through some of what I do. I'm not saying that my way is the highway. There are many ways to swing a cat with Photoshop, but you might pick up one or two things. And if you've got any tips for me, I'd appreciate them too, just to speed up workflow. So this was a picture of Siya sitting out with the ball. I just used a little hand flash bounced into a silver poly board. So I wanted to make this picture a little bit more dramatic, but I didn't want to lose any of the blacks. So if we just push the blacks up a little bit, we can add a little bit of texture. Never push the texture too much, and a little bit of clarity. This type of picture lends itself to a bit more texture and clarity than I'd like, just to make it give it a little bit more punch. Okay, our mission is to get rid of the colors on the rugby ball and to replace the original artwork on it, because the artwork suffered from being bashed around. So let's get a close look at what we're dealing with. And we can select the ball. I've put my feathering onto, I don't know, 40 or 50, no, 20 or so, just so we can select the ball fairly accurately, but also that it's not a line, a specific line, so you'll see all of the changes. So feather it a little bit so the changes aren't as drastic. Okay, then we can expand the feathering just a little bit so we don't have any edges that we don't play with. Okay, so now the client said please get rid of the colors. So if we just take our saturation down on the ball, we see that the colors just turn into gray. So it's still a bit distracting, and it's still very much there. But if we want those colors to disappear more, we take each individual color. So here the yellows, we've pulled down the saturation. You see the same thing happens. It just goes to gray. But if you take the lightness and you push it up, suddenly those yellows become white. There they become gray. And here they become white. Okay, so there are a few colors in this ball. So first we do yellows, and then we can go for the greens. There's normally a bit of cyan that also slips into pictures like this, and you don't really notice it. And then you can see the yellow's got a little bit of red in it. If we push this up here, you'll see how there's just a bit of red that crept into that yellow. So let's get rid of that too. Okay, so now we've got a more or less a grayscale ball. And now we can start messing around with the artwork. So these are the 6 artworks that the artist did. We just, because the ball is facing us, facing this way, we're going to replace the Mozzie. Mozzie's no more. It was a PNG, so it is transparent. Thank you to the client for supplying it that way. Right, so position it more or less the same as the Mozzie on the ball. Change the scale, get it round about to the same size. I don't think it needs to be exact, specifically with this type of art or this project. You don't have to be too accurate. It's more the feeling feeling of the picture more than an advertising shot of the ball itself. Okay, and then just play with distorting the image so it fits more or less over the original. It's difficult with the rugby ball because it's not perfectly round, but it is still round. So I think don't overthink it, but just get it more or less in the right scale and position. It's a bit of hit and miss, so just do what you think works and then try something different and see if it makes it better or worse. All right, go in there. Close enough. Okay, then we're going to get rid of the edges that stick out. Obviously, the edges that stick over the ball you definitely don't want, but we're going to come in a little bit closer just to give it kind of a worn, more of a worn look. Try to stick with the look and the feel of the rest of the ball just so it doesn't jump out like a sore thumb that you've messed with it. So definitely get rid of the outside edges. Remember, you're working on 2 layers here, so make sure you've selected the layer with the art, with the Mozzie art on it, and not the background layer, because it won't do anything. It'll just get rid of the background. Okay, toggle it on and off. Show the top layer and hide it. See how we're progressing. All right, now under the background image where we're going to drop the artwork onto, I want to make that a bit lighter to kind of make it a blank canvas. It'll make our new Mozzie look a little bit better. There's several ways to do this. I think I'm going to use a combination of a few. Make sure you, on your background, okay, so if you just lift your blacks inside your selection, and then lift your mid-tones as well, it doesn't do a bad job. Sometimes doing this, you never know, it's also hit and miss depending on what colors you do, but just toggle with your curve. So that's a little bit lighter. And now just to diffuse it a bit, we can use some Gaussian blur just to kind of mix it up a little bit. Try to get it a little bit, don't go too far because that happens, but come back where it's somewhere comfortable where you can still get some of the texture of the ball. Okay, then you can take your dodge tool. So this is something that if you did printing, black and white or color printing back in the day, you used dodge and burn tools actually underneath your enlarger. When you were projecting your image onto your paper, your negative or your positive, you'd cut out pieces of paper and you'd prevent certain light from hitting the paper for a certain amount of time, or otherwise you'd make it kind of burn into the paper even longer. So if you just go over your image and you keep clicking, now you're dodging your shadows or your midtones. Now let's try and blur it a little bit more again. Okay, so it's not completely gone, but that's okay. We don't need a completely blank canvas. The main thing is here, you still want to stick with some of the original ball. You don't want to just go and paste like drop white over it completely, because it'll just look like a flat piece of white. Right, now so let's add some grain on top of our, let's call it our canvas. Quite a lot because that ball is quite textured. However, the grain is very colorful, so let's take the saturation out, and that gives our ball quite a nice texture. Actually not too dissimilar to what the texture of the ball is really like. Okay, drop our Mozzie back on, move it around a little bit. I don't know how happy the artist would be with that, but hey, let's take some license. Just see if it looks a little bit easier on the eye. Well, okay, so we're getting there. It's not perfect. Let's just try and make it look a little bit more comfortable. The old Mozzie. That feels a bit better. Okay, so we've added grain to our background. Now, just because of the artwork itself, let's add some grain to that. So we can go back to our filter gallery and just do what we did previously. I'm going to do it twice, in fact, to give it quite a nice texture. Take our saturation down, of course, because you don't want those red, green, and blue pixels all over your grain. And we're starting to make it look half decent. Okay, take the opacity down a little bit, just to see if that is a little bit easier on the eye. It is. Let's not take it down too far. Okay, then we've got these dark areas still on the ball, which are a little bit distracting. So let's go to our good old dodge tool, and let's dodge it out. Some of the mid-tones. Actually, it's probably more black, but anyway, just make sure you've got a comfortable size brush that you're working with, not too big, not too small, and that you feather it a little bit so it's not like this dynamic edge wherever you burn, but there's a little bit of give and take. Okay, and then we're dodging over the black areas. You can see it's getting a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. Yeah, those dark areas up there, getting a little bit lighter too. Okay. This ball got quite knackered from throwing it around the whole day, and there were some kids involved in the shoot as well. So they weren't rugby players actually, they were township kids, so they like football more, but yeah, I got quite beaten. All right, we left out some areas here that still had some color in it, so we can go to your sponge tool and you can desaturate that. You see some of the grain also, because my feathering wasn't because my feathering was on about 20 or so. Some of those pixels fell outside of the feathering, so when I desaturated what was inside the feathering, it didn't desaturate what just fell on the outside. So we just go around and we clean that up. So it's the sponge desaturate tool, and once again you can make the brush any size. You can make it powerful or less powerful, the flow, so you can have more flow or less, but let's just try and get rid of a lot of the color that was left behind. There we go. This isn't going on major print, it's an online campaign. However, you see, because of our feathering, we also got some spill over off the ball. So let's just neaten that up. So we take our selection tool. I like working with the one that goes straight, even though it takes a little bit extra. I don't really trust myself doing freehand drawing with the normal lasso tool. All right. Then we start cloning. So always try and clone the lines so it looks realistic. Try and keep your horizontal, your vertical lines similar, so that it doesn't look like the step is actually broken and starting somewhere where it shouldn't be starting. And then always, if you get kind of artifacts that can telltale signs that you've been cloning, then just take some different areas of your step and clone over where you've cloned, and then it looks more natural. Just make up stuff. Just a little bit there, a little bit of an edge that I want to take off. So select it, get your clone tool, clone some of the step, and just go over that bit and get rid of it. That's better. Okay, zoom out. See how we're looking. Okay, I wouldn't print that on a poster because you would see the issues, but I think for online that'll be fine. And now we can start to take care of the rest of the picture. So let's flatten the artwork onto the ball. And now let's just add a little bit of zhuzh, just to make the image a little bit more punchy. Okay, so this is your custom your lens settings, your customized lens settings. So that's where you change your distortion, but we're just going to add some vignetting there. Now, I don't want to, it would be nice to crop it like that to keep it nice and square, but I'd lose his hand and I'd hate to lose his hand. So let's keep it a little bit skew. I'd rather do that, keep his hand in. And now when I make the image darker, I don't want to lose the detail in his hand. I'd rather keep it there. So what we can do is we can do a selection. Put your feathering on about 50 or 60, just so once again it's a gradual change. So take the saturation of the whole image down first, just so you concentrate a bit more on him rather than the background, the blue. Okay, and I think let's just dodge his face a little bit. So just, okay, dodge his face just a touch, and then here's where we're going to lose the hand if we make this image dark, and I don't want to lose the hand. So we can get a selection, put it on about 50, 60, somewhere around there, and let's take a lasso, no, not that one. Let's take a lasso selection of his hand area that I don't want to disappear into the shadows. Just rough, it doesn't have to be too accurate. So those are the dark areas that I don't want to disappear. All right, now I invert my selection, so it's the rest of the picture that's selected, and now I can go back to my curves and I can darken the rest of it, and his hand will stay the same. Okay, glad to keep his hand in, and the rest of the image is nice and punchy. There's enough detail there. Okay, in the background we're going to want to work on that. It's just a bit distracting, I think. So once again we can take our selection tool. I like using the straight one. And let's do a selection. Try and imagine what it would be like in real life without the plant actually being there. Try and keep the lines the same, because you know what photographers are like. They look for these little problems in images. Okay, then we get our clone tool. Let's clone from that area. Bear in mind, if we do, it's going to be a little bit unnatural, because you can see the blue on the selected area is darker than this blue. But anyway, let's just get it done and we can worry about the lightness later. So we can clone from there, and when we've got enough of that blue in the selected area, then we can start cloning from inside that area. There we go. We just borrow from him and give to him. Borrow and give, borrow and give. Smooth it out a little bit. Try and make it more or less even. Now let's darken it so it looks more like the real scene. So those are your curves. Take it down, that's about right. Let's hide our selection and see what a mess we've made. Okay, just fix that line up. Okay, our cloning tool. So just clone from a little bit higher up on the line and straighten it up a little. Okay, that's not very important to do, but if it makes you feel better, do it. Okay, we've got a straighter line there now. Let's zoom out and see how it looks from a distance. That's fine. Ooh, those above his head, the flying saucers, let's get rid of those. Those were lights inside the actual house. Just clone blackness, that's very easy, quick to do. And this plant is a little bit bothersome. And we can see the lines in the background, so it'll be worthwhile actually getting rid of that. It won't be a difficult job. So remember, keep clicking and then continuing your line. So you click on that line of the wall and then you carry on in line with it so it looks as natural as possible. Click in that corner, click on that line and come down over the plant. Click on the line, go up where the line should be. And the rest is fairly straightforward, but once again, just follow your line. So that shadow, let's keep it coming down. Let's not have a break there. that shadow keep coming down in the same line. Click on the shadow up there and then come down. Okay, can you see we've got those artifacts there? So just copy a little bit of wall from somewhere else and stick it over those duplications there. Otherwise, that's give a telltale sign that you've been photoshopping. Okay, so that's almost there. You could add a bit of diffuse glow to this if you want to, but I'm scared that the white will blow out of the shirt. So we can just put a little white border around the picture. Always makes it a little bit nicer, a little bit more contained, frames it to an extent. And then if we go back to our original image, that's what it looked like. And what we're ending up with now is that. Okay, hopefully we're happier with the after than we are with the before, but you never know. Sometimes it could be the other way around.